While this is still booting up, I'm going to jump over to DC2 and rename and reboot. CS01 DC2. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, my DC is back up. DC1. I'm going to sign in. Now before I move on, I'm going to create one reverse zone for all my subnets, and then I'm going to configure sites and services before any other DCs are up and running. So when I promote all the other DCs, they'll already be aware of all my sites. So I'm going to go into DNS. Highlight reverse, say new zone, and just keep clicking X until you get to the reverse and the reverse name, and I'm just typing 172.16. My class will address, so that will cover all three subnets, East, West, and WAN. No other changes. Once my reverse is done, I just need to create it. Dynamic DNS will populate all the records for me. I'm going to go into Sites and Services. I'm going to rename this West. I'm going to create a new one called East using that site link. That site link is going to link east to west. So I'm just going to give it a more descriptive name. East and west. And I'm going to replicate every 15 minutes. If you don't do this, guys, you won't finish the test because it'll just take forever. Every time you create something new, it'll take forever before you get across the WAN link. Now I'm going to create two subnets, one for East, one for West, and associate them with the proper sites. So 172.16.0.0/21 is West. A new subnet, 172.16.8.0/21 is East. I have those on the map. Guys, those sites are under the names, those site addresses. Now that I have my sites configured, I have my IP site link configured, I'm going to label this is going to be my bridgehead server for the parent domain. I want to control replication going across the WAN link. I don't want 6 DCs replicating across the WAN link. I only want DC1 replicating to DC3 across the WAN link. So when I promote any other DCs now, they'll automatically have this information. I won't have to wait for them to replicate it because they'll get it right from the initial replication. So now that's done, I can go and promote DC2. By default, DC1 will be a global catalog server. Also, it's going to be the infrastructure master. In a multi-domain scenario, you do not want your global catalog on an infrastructure master. So what I'm going to do is move the infrastructure master over here while I promote it at the same time. I'm also going to make sure that this is not a global catalog. So I can do that all while I promote it. So if you do this graphically, you can't do this. This is only possible because I'm doing it using PowerShell. I'm going to encrypt my password. Install. I don't want to do a new force. I don't want to do a new domain. I just want to do a new domain controller. Domain name is Contosa.com. Credentials. I'm going to have it prompt me for credentials. No global catalog. Move infrastructure operation master. I'm going to make it a new domain controller for this domain. I'm going to supply the credentials. I'm telling it to have no global catalog, and at the same time move the infrastructure master role if necessary. Meaning, if the infrastructure master is currently on a global catalog, move the infrastructure master here, because this one won't have a global catalog. Hit enter. It's asking for my safe mode password, which I skipped in my script and I shouldn't have, but I'm just going to enter it here. Gotta type it twice. I encrypted my password, but I forgot to use it. No big deal. So this is going to automatically be added to the West site. It's not going to have a global catalog. The infrastructure master will be moved over while it promotes. It's also going to make it a DNS server. So while this is going on, I'm going to unpause DC3 and configure the IP settings. DC2 is rebooting. Just waiting on DC3. Okay, there it is. Not quite. Since I'm not going to do a lot of stuff to DC3, as soon as it boots, I'm moving it over to the mechanical hard disk. New net IP. This is going to be, according to our map, zero dot 4, 172.16.0.4. Again, the prefix is 21. Default gateway is .1. The network interface is called Ethernet. Set DNS client server addresses. This is running so slow. I'm just going to type it out. I'm going to point it to DC 1 and 2 because they both know about Contoso. In my alias, I'm just going to do asterisk for all network cards. Now I'm going to install Active Directory. Include all the management tools and restart. While this is installing, I'm going to go look at DC2 and check it out. I'm going to go to Sites and Services. If I go to the west site and highlight services, I can see that DC1 is a global catalog server and a bridgehead server, and DC2 is not a global catalog. I can see that DC2 is part of the right site. Also, if I go to Active Directory users and computers, and I right-click the domain name and go to Operations Master, if I go over to Infrastructure tab, I can see DC2 is the Infrastructure Master, which is the way I want it. Because this DC isn't doing a lot for this particular lab, I'm just going to go move the hard disk over to the second mechanical disk. Just to speed this up. Again, just the differencing disk, not the parent disk. Going back to DC3. DC3 is the installation is done. I'm going to rename and reboot. CS01 DC3. Now this is going to be a new child domain. This won't be a new domain controller in an existing domain. This is going to be my child. So host name, my host name is set. Get net adapter. Get net IP address rather. I can see all my IP settings are done. So what I'm going to do now is install. My force is created. This domain I'm creating doesn't exist yet, so I can't create a new domain controller for a domain that doesn't exist. So I'm going to create a new domain. Dash. The new domain will be child. The parent domain will be contoso.com. This will automatically make it a child domain, not a tree domain. Dash domain type, if you really want to specify, you could say child. It'll be smart enough to do it without it. Credentials, I'm going to supply my enterprise admin credentials. No global catalog. And force. So guys, I'm gonna show this to you slowly. You haven't seen this yet. Install -add domain. The new domain name is child. The parent domain name is Contoso. This is redundant, but I'm just putting it here to be more complete. It knows it's a child domain because I'm not supplying the tree domain name here. Credentials, enterprise admin, I'm creating a new domain in the force. No global catalog, force. Guys, I didn't set my admin, my recovery password, so it's going to prompt me again. It's going to do its thing. I'm going to pause the video. Let's do our first break now. Give that time to... guys, DC3 is on the other side. So I made a mistake. I thought I was configuring this machine, when in reality I was configuring this one. So since I've already started, I'm going to do this right. So I'm going to go back to DC3. The IP address for DC3 should be 8.2. 8.2, and the gateway should be 8.1. I'm going to show you the map again. So that should be 8.2, and it should be on this side. So instead of being a new domain, it's going to be a new domain controller in an existing domain. So install AD domain controller, because it's going to be an existing domain. The domain name will be contoso.com. Credentials. I'm going to supply the domain admin for Contoso. And I'm going to force. Guys, again, I'm just going to set the recovery password. And I should have made it said no. Oh no, this will be a global catalog. So this is right. No. So this should have a global catalog. So while that's promoting, I'm going to go configure the right DC for the child domain. DC4. I mean DC5. So this will have an IP address of 0.4, gateway of 0.1. I'll point it to these two DCs because they know about Contoso. It doesn't really matter if I do DC3 and 4 before DC 5 and 6, it doesn't really matter. So new net IP address. It's running really slow again. One 172.16.0.4. Guys, I don't have to type prefix length. I can leave it as prefix because it's the only thing that starts with prefix. And that's going to be /21 dash interface alias is Ethernet. Default gateway is 172.16.0.1. See how it kept the prefix length? Okay, so now I'm going to set DNS client server addresses as (172.16.0.2) 0.3 interface alias asterisk. Install AD domain services and include the management tools, restart if needed. While that's installing, I'm going to go check the real DC3. It's rebooted. First thing I'm going to do, this is the first DC on the east side. I'm going to label this a bridgehead server to help the KCC set up the replication topology properly. Sites and services. The east has one domain. And so far, West only has one because the child DC hasn't been promoted yet. So I'm going to right-click this and make this a bridgehead for the east site, for the parent domain. I don't need to do anything for the child domain on the east site because there won't be a DC on the child domain or the tree domain on the east site. There's my site link. There's my subnets. It's all been copied over. I'm not going to do a lot to this DC, so I'm just going to move this over to the other hard disk. Just the differencing disk, not the parent disk. I've installed Active Directory on DC5, the child domain. I'm going to rename and reboot. Rename computer. New name is CS01 DC5. Restart. Now I'm going to promote this to a domain controller. Install for new child domain. Install AD new domain. New domain name is child. Parent domain is Contoso. Guys, I'm just going to let it prompt me for credentials. I don't want a global catalog because there's already one on the west site. Force. It's going to prompt me for credentials. It's going to prompt me for the recovery password. I'm doing this just to keep the command short. If you're scripting it, put it in your script. No, I have to supply the credentials. Sorry, guys. Get credentials, Contoso. Guys, once it's promoted, I'm just going to move it over. Guys, one thing I missed is on DC1, I'm going to replicate my reverse zone to all DCs in the forest. So go to Tools, DNS. So right now I have this reverse zone. I want to replicate it. Go to Properties. To all, instead of this domain, change it to forest. So regardless, whatever whatever domain you're part of, you'll get the reverse zone. I don't want to recreate the reverse zone for each domain. I want one reverse zone for the entire forest, because that really goes by IP. So as long as your IP starts with 172.16, this will be the reverse that you use. It'll start populating with all the DCs that I need. Just waiting on the child domain to finish up. Guys, while that's going on, I'm going to move on to DC6, configuring the IPs and everything. Still loading up. New net IP address, 172.16.0.5. Guys, to show you on the map, 0.5, that's the new tree domain. Dash prefix is 21. Default gateway, yeah, it's just not auto tabbing anything at all. interface alias is Ethernet force. For some reason, guys, it just doesn't make that purple. I don't know why. Set DNS client server address. Addresses is 172.16.0.2 and 0.3. Interface alias is asterisk. Install Windows features. Name is AD domain services. Include the management tools. Restart if necessary. DC5 is booting up. Again, I'm not going to do a lot with DC5, so I'm just going to move the hard disk, because my computer is running extremely slow. Rename, reboot. Going to check on DC5, still rebooting. I'm going to open up DC1 so I can check sites and services. Sites and services is aware of DC5 yet. It doesn't know what domain is part of yet. It's aware of DC3. It knows it's a global catalog. It doesn't know it's a bridgehead yet. So stuff is still getting replicated. I'm going to check out the DNS on the child domain. So the DNS looks good here. I don't have the reverse yet. I'm going to check the DNS out on the parent domain. You have to check the delegation. Look, it didn't do it right. Even though it's supposed to do the delegation, it didn't. So instead, it created a new subdomain. So what I'm going to do is delete this. You've got to check out DNS and make sure it looks right. So this is not a delegation. I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to right click, new delegation. I want the child domain controller to handle its own namespace. That's not a child domain here, that would be a delegation here. The child domain looks fine, but on the parent domain it doesn't look right. So I'm going to type my namespace I'm going to delegate to the child DC. I'm going to add 172.16.0.0.4. Sorry, I'm typing that in the wrong place. 172.16.0.4. The name of that machine is CS01 DC5.child.contoso.com. That's the server that's going to handle that namespace. Click OK. If it's not grayed out, it's not a delegation. If it's a folder, it's a child domain. If it's a child domain, that means the parent DC thinks it's going to handle the namespace for the child and the parent. We don't want that. We have a DC handling that namespace. We're just going to delegate control to it. Looking at all this, I can tell you I'm moving too fast because it's not replicating everything I need to. If I were you on the test, and I got to this point and I saw things were missing, like the child domain, the delegation wasn't working, I would hold off and just walk away. Give it like 10-15 minutes. But I'm not going to do that on the video. I'm just going to go forge ahead. I've been doing this for a long time, so if things happen, I know enough to go and fix it. So right now I'm going to promote this to a new tree domain. Set the IP, set the host name, install Active Directory. So install AD domain. The domain name will be adatum.com. The parent domain will be contoso.com. You see, it's going to realize it'll be a tree domain because I'm putting a fully qualified domain name here. But just to make sure you have no mistakes, it's going to be a tree domain. Credentials will be Contoso. I'm supplying my enterprise admin credentials, and I'll prompt me for the password. I already have a global catalog on this side, DC1, so I don't want a global catalog. Force. I'm just going to press cancel now, just so you can see my command before I type in my password. create a new domain, supply the domain name .com, so it sees it's a new namespace. It doesn't include the parent. Parent domain, it's a tree domain, credentials, no global catalog because I already have one on the west site. I typed it wrong. I'm going to pause the video. Guys, let's do our break, and we're going to give it a little bit of time. Just so replicate. Guys, someone asked me, where do I need to be next class period? I'm going to give you some time at the beginning of next class period to catch up. You do not need the tree domain and the child domain. If your DFSs aren't up, that's not going to cause a problem. But you at least need DC1, DC2, DC3, DC4 up and running with the sites and services configured. So those are things you'll need for the next class period, because I won't be able to do the CA or the web server if that's not up and running, or the DHCP and the relay agent. So that's where you need to be next class period. I'm going to repeat that.
Wednesday?
Yes. So I'm going to give you some time Wednesday to catch up at the beginning. So here's where you need to be next class period. DC6 is not needed. After this, DC5 is not needed. The DFSs aren't needed. DC2 and 1, it's all right. If it's our machine, don't worry about it. No, I'm being serious. I don't want you to injure yourself even further. I'm thank goodness it didn't fall on you. We've had that scenario. DC 1 and 2, DC 3 and 4, the WAN link up and running, and sites and services configured. Okay? So guys, I'm going to go to DC 6, see where we're up and running. Every time I go get a DC up and running, I check DNS, sites and services. Make sure they look right. My DNS is still kind of missing some things. I don't have my reverse. So I'm going to go to DC1. I cannot delegate tree domains. I don't have the ability to do that in DNS. So what I have to do is called a conditional forwarder. A new conditional forwarder. Normally, if I don't know the answer, I send it out to the internet. Now, for this namespace, adatum.com, I'm going to send that to 172.16.0.5. That DC. You found the name. You can replicate it so everyone knows about it. Child domains, do delegation. Tree domains, do a conditional forwarder. Guys, I'm going to wait before I move this hard disk over. Give it time to replicate and get everything that it needs. Okay, so now guys, I'm going to do group nesting. I'm going to go to Active Directory users and computers. Right now, it only shows one domain. I could go to each domain controller and do this, or I can do it all from here, hopefully. So first, I'm going to create 3 user accounts, one in each domain, one in the child, one in the parent, one in the tree. User 1, U1, set the password. Create a global group in each domain. Parent, global group. Now I'm going to connect to the child domain. I could just go and sign in as the child DC if I wanted to. But I'm the enterprise admin, so I can connect to any domain that I want. Again, I'm going to create a new user. User 2, U2. Create a new group, a global group, child global group. And I forgot to do this. I'm going to add that user to child global group. So now this user is a part of 2 groups. Domain user group, automatic, and the child global group. I'm going to reconnect back to my parent. I'm going to add this user to the global group. Parent, global. Guys, I don't even have to do anything else. I can just hit enter because that was unique enough. So user 1 is a member of the parent global group and the domain local and the domain users group. Everyone's automatically added to the domain users group. Now I'm going to connect to a datum. Create a user. Create a global group, then add the user to the global group. Tree global group. So user 3 is a member of the tree global group and the domain users group for the datum domain. Now I'm going to connect back to my parent domain. I'm going to create a new domain local group. This is the group that I'll assign permissions to. Parent domain local. I'm going to go to that group. The members should be the global groups from each domain. The global groups hold the user. The users go into global groups. The global groups go into domain local groups, and the domain local group is assigned permissions to a resource. So parent global group. I'm going to add, I'm going to switch domains now to the child domain and type child global group. If this doesn't work, guys, what do? Wait. Let it get time to replicate. Now I'm going to switch domains again to a datum. Tree global group. Now here's where it'll give you an error. Click OK. It didn't for me. My users are in these global groups. The global groups are in the domain local group. Now when I set up my DFS, the user will have access to that resource. So I'm going to boot up both DFSs. You see, once everything gets settled in, it starts running a little faster. This is going to be 172.16.0.6. If you look at the map, it's 0.6. And this will be 8.4 on this side. .248. I want to point it to both parent DCs on the west side. I'm going to try to rename and join at the same time. I don't know if it'll work. If it doesn't, I'll reboot again. I'll rename and reboot. I'm going to do the same to DFS2. The IP address will be 8.4. .4. .1 is the gateway. I'm going to point it to DC3 and DC4. DC4 isn't up and running yet. When I sign into DFS, make sure you sign in as a domain admin. I never had to worry about that for DCs because you can only sign as a domain admin. But for member servers, meaning servers that are joined to the domain that aren't DCs, you may have to sign in as a domain admin. Going to do the same thing for DFS2. On both these machines, I'm going to install DFS namespace and replication. I'm going to do the same thing for DFS2. While I'm waiting for that to install, I'm going to unpause DC4 and configure at least the IP addresses. Eight dot 3. The gateway is 8.1, the router, and I'm going to point it to 8.2. If you want it as a backup, you can point it to 0.2 as well. Optional. 8.2 is on this east site, and it already should know about Contoso. I can't promote 4 until DC3 is up and running and settled down for a bit. So it replicated everything across the WAN link. I'm going to try to join it to the domain and rename it at the same time. If it fails to rename, I'm just going to do it after the fact. I didn't really need to join it to the domain, but I already did, so. Since I did, I'm going to sign out, sign in as the domain admin, then promote it. Guys, it's not important if you change the name first or install the software. It doesn't really matter what you do first. PowerShell, I generally install first, then rename. Graphically, I generally rename first and then install afterwards. I'm going to install Active Directory. Then go back to my DFS. I can do everything from DFS 1. So I'm going to add both DFS servers to this console. Add a server. I don't have that many servers, so I'm just going to say find now and choose DFS 2. I'm going to create a group so I can see all my servers right here for event logs. DFS servers, add both to that group. So if I have an issue, I can go right here and look at all my DFS servers. Now I'm going to configure DFS. Create a new namespace. Start with this machine. DFS 1. Call public. Next, create. Don't do this until the software is installed on both machines. DFS namespace and replication is installed on both machines. So I'm going to add a new namespace server to that namespace. CS01 DFS 2. If you get an error here, you didn't install the software on DFS 2. So for that namespace, I have 2 namespace servers. Also, you can see that this service is site aware. These namespace servers don't serve up data, they just serve up links. So now I'm going to add a new folder called data. When someone clicks on data, it's going to take them to one of 2 shares. The first share, that's wrong. CS01 DFS 1 data. That's the SMB link, SMB path. This is the local path. Shares, it's going to create a folder called shares, and under that, create a folder called data, and then it's going to share data. Everyone full control. Turn off the old share permissions. Next one is the other target. If they click on data, it's going to take them either to DFS1 data or DFS2 data. Network path, local path. Turn off old share permissions. Click OK. And replicate between the 2. I don't care which is primary, they're both blank. They're both empty. If one had data, that would be my primary. In no scenario can both have data, incidentally. It won't merge them. Okay, so my shares are up and running, my DFS is up and running. So now I'm going to set the permissions. This is the whole point of creating all those groups, to do this. So I'm going to go File and Storage Services, go to Shares. On one of those data, preferably the one you set as primary, I'm going to go to Properties. Again, don't do it to the root. That's the namespace. You want to do it to your actual data share. So I'm going to go to Properties, go to Permissions, and customize them. I'm going to remove these two and add parent domain local. Then give that modify rights. Users one in global, the global one in the domain local. I'm granting the domain local modify rights to this resource. Click OK. OK. Group nesting is done. I'm using DFS to test it. So now I'm going to go and finish DC4. Promote it to a domain controller for an existing domain. Guys, I accidentally joined the domain, so it populated all this for me. DC3 is a global catalog for the west site, for the east site rather, so I don't need another global catalog. No other changes. Let it do its thing. Now I'm going to create a group policy in the parent domain that I'll use in all domains. And I'm going to use again the DFS to test it. So I'm going to go to Tools, Group Policy Management. So I'm going to create one group policy that maps a network drive. I'm going to use it on all DCs, on all domains. So I'm going to create a new group policy, mapped drives. I'm going to edit it. Under Preferences, Window Settings, I'm going to go to Drive Maps. Users, Preferences, Window Settings. If you go to Computers, Preferences, Window Settings, there's this network share. That's not the same thing. That's used to create network shares, not map tool. That's a different policy altogether. So make sure you choose Users, Preferences, Window Setting, Drive Maps, create a new drive map. I can't update a map that doesn't exist, so I have to create it. The location is our DFS path. Automatically reconnect every time you log in. Give it a label of data. Give it a drive letter of M. Click OK. So now we have this policy. I want to link it to my parent domain. So highlight the domain, link it. Choose the drive map. Now I'm going to highlight domain and say show domains. I want to see all my domains, not just the parent. So I'm going to highlight the child domain, link an existing GPO. I don't have that in this child domain. So I need to jump down to the parent domain and choose that policy. So I have a policy on the parent domain. I'm linking to the child domain. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my tree. Link an existing GPO, jump to Contoso, and link that policy. The goal for this, what I'm showing you right now, is don't create a bunch of policies that you have to maintain. If you have one policy that's going to work for all domains, create one policy. You only have to maintain one policy. If you make a change, you only have to change one policy. You don't have to create a policy in every domain. You can do it on one and link it to... I could have made this in the child domain. It didn't matter where I made it. But if you do make it in the child domain, that means the child domain admin has rights to change it. Right now, the only person who can change this policy is the parent domain admin or the enterprise admin. That's it. So if you don't want the child domain admins to have any control of those policies, make sure you create them in the parent domain. Okay. I'm going to check child DC, the child 4, see where that's at. It's rebooting. Just to be sure again, I'm going to check sites and services, see how that is working out. East has 2 DCs. I don't know where 4 is yet, but it's not a global catalog and it's not a bridgehead server. DC3 is a bridgehead server, so DC3 is going to be the only one that replicates across the WAN link, and it's only going to replicate to DC1. DC2 is up, DC3 is a child domain, DC6 is up, one global catalog on this site, one global catalog on this site. It's going to populate here in a little bit for DC4. If you want, you can see who I'm going to replicate to. So far, DC3 is going to replicate to DC1. Eventually, 4 is going to show up here. The KCC hasn't done all that it needs to do. So my sites are coming along. Again, they're still not all populated because DC4 is still booting. That's who DC1 is going to receive that replication from. That's who DC is going to receive replication from. DC5 and DC6. So give it some time. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do, guys, is create a central store. So I'm going to go to the internet. I'm going to download a GPO template for Chrome. I don't care what you download a template for. I want you to understand how to create a central store. So Chrome group policy template. It's in one of these. I don't know where at. You gotta keep clicking these links until you find it.
I got it from the first link.
Here?
Like, yeah, go down a little bit and wait, go back to your searches. It's the first one. Go down a little bit, Windows, and then the link, the zip file.
Okay. Guys, if you follow this instructions, remember we did it last time, that's only for local. We don't want to do local We want to do it in a group policy. So I'm going to show in folder, unzip it. Okay. This is right. I'm going to go back one. Go here. This is wrong. I can't find this. You know, it's just wrong. Okay. So I have this policy template that I've downloaded. Now I'm going to turn it into a central store. I'm going to go to my C drive, go to Windows directory, and I'm going to find policy definitions. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my network share called contoso.com, sysvol. Contoso, policies, and paste policy definitions there. By doing that, you're creating an essential store. And I'll show you where to see that. So now I'm going to go back to my parent domain, group policy objects. I'm going to create a new policy for Chrome. Guys, I don't care if you actually make any settings. I'm more concerned that you know how to set up a central store. I am not really concerned if you know how to set the home page. I'm going to create a group policy. If I go to edit, preferences, no, policies, I just highlight it. Now it's from a central store and it's not local. So once you have a central store configured, add or remove a template, add, browse to your downloads folder, Windows. If you go to here, it's not there. The ADMX isn't there. This is the old way of doing it. This is the new. I can't get the new to work. Maybe it's in another language. I don't know. I'm never going to get it to work. So I'm just going to go the old method. English. And close. So now I have policies to configure Chrome. I don't have to do that importing the template in every DC now. I put it in the Active Directory sysvol folder. It'll get replicated to all DCs. All DCs will see that it exists and automatically assume to use that as opposed to the local policy definitions. Again, the policy definition is just the settings. It's not changes that you made, just the definition of the policy. So now it's going to get it from Active Directory and not get it from the local hard disk. I'm going to see that you can import a template and set up a central store. I don't care if you actually apply this group policy or not. I just want to see that you can set up that central store and import a template. Okay, am I missing anything, guys? Is there something I covered at a lab that I forgot? We did the central store. I haven't done this yet, guys. I forgot to show you. Guys, I'm not going to show you how to create a bunch of OUs. I highly recommend that you use a group PowerShell to do it. Save yourselves a lot of clicking. I gave you the script for this last time. Like I gave you a little bit of a tip, and we did that already. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to try to join the two videos together and get them uploaded to YouTube. Guys, you can stick around here now and try to catch up a little bit, but I'm going to give you hour and a half next time to catch up. I need DC 1, 2, 3, and 4, sites and services, and the link between them. That's all I need set up. Okay, that's it for today. I will see you next week if you leave.